Hey, my name is Melinda Russell, and I am obsessed with telling the stories of women involved in motorsport, young and older, from all walks of life, currently involved in a wide range of roles or sharing their stories from the past. I'm a wife, mother of 4 adult children, and a mama of 16. In 2017, I was searching social media for a group dedicated to women in motorsports. When I didn't find what I was looking for, I posted a message to a few racing pages to see if any women would like to connect with me. And now I have thousands of women and men who are part of the Women's Motorsports Network. As crew chief of the only media company dedicated to women in motorsports, I work from wherever my travels take me, publishing this podcast, the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, and Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show. You will hear from women who share their stories from the grid of life, how they manage the messy and memorable moments of family, work, and racing. You will hear their tried and true secrets of success, and many other topics like friendships, family, hardships, and heroes that women deal with to balance the seasons of life. So grab your favorite beverage, pull up a seat, make sure you are comfy, and get ready to be inspired and encouraged from the stories on the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. If you're looking to buy, sell, or trade the stuff that strokes your engine, anything from truck parts to classic and muscle cars, RVs to hot rods, and everything in between, then check out our official classifieds at racingjunk.com. RacingJunk.com is the world's #1 online racing and performance marketplace, the ultimate one-stop shop where you'll find what you need to rock your ride. If it belongs in your garage, it's for sale on RacingJunk.com. Log on to RacingJunk.com to find the gear you're looking for, sell your extra stuff, keep up on racing news and tech tips, and more. Again, that's RacingJunk.com. Hello, everyone. This is Melinda Russell with the Women's Motorsports Network. And if you're watching this on YouTube, you're going to be like, that doesn't look like a woman. And no, because sometimes I do what I call my bonus episodes. And a bonus episode could be a woman, a man, it doesn't matter. It could be a young kid, it could be an older person. But the bonus episodes are usually men. And the reason that we call them bonus episodes is because I do try to stick to women in motorsports for the regular podcast. But sometimes someone comes to my attention that we need to have on the show. And so instead of just like ignoring that, I like to have a way to interview people that I think should have a chance to tell their story. And so tonight, the bonus episode is Kyle Lockrow. Kyle was suggested to me to interview, that he has a great story. And so we're going to find out all about Kyle tonight. So Kyle, I just want to welcome you to the show.
Hi, Melinda. Thank you so much to you and all of your audience and everybody on your show for having me on. And I'm glad that I'm on for a good reason. It's not because I'm a bonehead or something.
No, absolutely not. No, not that at all. So Kyle, first, why don't we get to know you a little bit better? Would you share some things about yourself that you're willing for everybody to know?
Well, I'm 33 years old, and it's been a journey with the racing. I started at 17 years old. I started having a passion for NASCAR at 7 years old. I grew up watching Hanna-Barbera flavored cartoons with Scooby-Doo, Flintstones, Jetsons. When Melling Racing and Diamond Ridge had the Cartoon Network cars in the late 90s, it was a big motivator for me to really get into NASCAR, and it helped me as a child, as it did for many others that I've heard about over the years. But I also had some close family friends that I went to school with. Their oldest son, Andrew Montag, his dad, Denny, and then his mom, Molly, they introduced me to the NASCAR 98 PlayStation 1 console game. And from then on, it was some call it a passion, others call it an obsession, potato, potato. But for me, it was something that I shared very deeply. And it was something that me and my grandmother, who on my mom's side that's no longer with us, we watched every weekend. And she swore that the day she retired, she swore I was going to get to go cup racing, or I was going to make it to cup somehow. And she was going to get an RV and follow me around every week. So it was something that I could share with her. I was very close with her as a child, and we collected a lot of diecasts when I was a kid. But from there, it not only grew into me being a fan, but when I was 17 years old, I actually decided I wanted to give it a shot. I had an injury in high school when I was a wrestler and did a few other sports. When the doctor, after the surgery, and the doctor said, you can do this again, but I don't know if I can fix you up again. So I said, you know what, let's give this racing thing a shot. I always was on the simulator as a kid with the NASCAR Papyrus games, and I really just wanted to see if I could make something out of it. So I started in late models for some testing, took a step back, really got my racing going in 4-cylinders and Legends cars, worked my way back to late models, did some ARCA testing at short tracks, and ultimately ended up at Daytona by accident. And I've just progressively rolled into different series. I've tried to diversify myself, road racing. And from there, now I've moved up into ARCA and hoping starting next year to be in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series as a development driver for G2G Racing, Tim Vienn's Toyota operation out of Mooresville.
Well, that's a pretty exciting story to hear. And, you know, Kyle, what you just said to me is has been a lifelong dream for you, but for a lot of young men and young ladies. They get introduced to motorsports, and then whatever happens. They get hurt here, or they get introduced to it somewhere else, and they're like, I think I'm going to try this. I think this is something I want to do. And it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of motivation and passion and money, right, to get there. And so, you know, I admire that you never gave up. And at 33, you're still young. You know, I have to laugh when
I don't feel it some days, not to interrupt you, but I don't feel it some days. Some days I wake up and I went, wow, I'm about a day over dead.
Yeah. But in NASCAR, they talk about Kyle Busch and some of them. Oh, they're the older ones, and they are the older ones in the series compared to like Carson, who's 20. But 33 is still young. You have plenty of years left to race, and so give it a shot, give it your best, all, and we're all going to be cheering for you. So what is it about motorsports that you just could not get it out of your blood?
For me, motorsports has just always been something that I felt like I've been naturally good at, compared to where stick and ball sports, I was never the most athletic. I don't come from the most athletic background in my family, let's say. I mean, my mom was a decent athlete. My grandfather was a pretty good football player. My dad is very book smart, and my dad is just very good. He wasn't really into sports. Just wasn't, not that he wasn't exposed to it, but just wasn't for him. And I feel like it actually benefited me a little bit, because he's been hard on me to an extent about making sure I'm well spoken. And I never understood it for a long time. And honestly, the last 5 years with the racing, especially with the increase in media and the demand that a driver has nowadays, I realized that he actually did me a favor. And I actually want to thank him tonight on the show. Sometimes I've been a little hypocritical about my parents, because we tend to butt heads a bit about racing and have for a long time. But I have to commend my dad. He has been very hard on me about proper English and presentation. And honestly, I appreciate what he's done for me, because while I don't expect and have never expected my parents to put 5 mortgages out on their house so I can go race in NASCAR, And I don't expect them to do that. I actually made some decisions for my education to stay in state and do things on a more conservative basis. So my parents could retire, so they could pay their house off, because I want them to enjoy life. They've sacrificed a lot for me. So I wanted to be smart, and hopefully maybe if I can make it in racing, maybe I can pay it back even more so a little bit for them. But no, my dad actually was has helped me so much with the writing and the grammar, and it's helped me so much on the business side of the racing. But I still love the speed and the challenge of controlling something that to the average person is not supposed to be controlled, whether it's a sports car, a stock car, a drag race car, whatever a dirt bike, whatever the case is. It's just something that, while I struggled at stick and ball, when I got behind the wheel of a race car, I felt at home. I felt the most confident. And to be perfectly honest with you and open and transparent, it got me through a lot of rough years of some bullying when I was in school. For you name it, they picked it. But for me, racing was my escape, and it was a way for me to find confidence. It was a way for me to find out who I was, and it was a way for me to test limits that I didn't know I had in myself. And it actually, the concentration and the motivation and the dedication you have to have, it's actually helped me as I've transitioned into an IT career from my full-time job outside of the driving.
Yeah. There's so much more that we can learn from racing besides how to drive the car. People who don't know anything about motorsports, or who only watch on Sunday, or they're a fair weather fan or whatever that might be, they don't realize the things that you gain from being involved. First of all, the thing that I love about motorsports is the people I meet. So I have a whole family of people that I would have never had it not been for motorsports. The confidence that you gain by having a goal, setting yourself maybe a challenge to do this, and then you are successful at it. There's so many things, Kyle, that we can't even explain to people. Really, they have to experience it.
It's just like a fan, to put it a little more into perspective for the listeners. There's so many people that, while Fox and NBC and ESPN over the years and TNT and others have done a yeoman's job of giving spot on coverage each and every weekend, while we may not disagree, or we may not agree, or we may disagree with what the announcers or the play-by-play analysts may have to say, or we may see favoritism, let's say. Just we hear all kinds of things in racing, let's say. But what I hear most is, it looks boring. It looks like you're just in there on a Sunday drive and you're turning left, and then you go left again, and then you go down a straightaway and you happen to make another left turn. And what they don't realize is, until they actually go to the track, and to your point, and they meet the fans and they see the passion and the love and the disdain they have for some drivers and personalities in racing, let's say, especially in the rivalry cases. But when they can see it, hear it, smell it, experience it, feel the vibration of 30,000 horsepower firing up, going around the racetrack every weekend. And then when they can see it, especially at the short tracks and the road courses where they don't run the right side windows sometimes, it really allows those fans, especially when you sit up close at places like Richmond or Bristol, Martinsville, or even at like Watkins Glen, when you're at a road course, you can see the drivers in there, the men and the women who are putting their lives on the line, shifting, driving those things, fighting those cars. Because, I mean, it looks easy on TV, but we all know a race car could be a winner one week and it could be a dumpster fire the next week on lap one.
And you've done nothing to it. You haven't changed anything up a lot or whatever. And then, oh my gosh, it's just amazing how smart the people have to be that are putting their time, and that's their job, to make sure that that car runs its best week after week. And like you said, some weeks it's great, and the next week it's at the end, and you're like, what the heck happened?
I know it's incredible. You finish well one week, you put it up on jack stands. We're not going to touch it. We're just going to flip the setup, make a couple air pressure changes, maybe adjust the bar for going from a Kansas to, let's say, going to Phoenix. And next thing you know, you come out and you decide to take the same car because you like it and it ran well. And then all of a sudden you get to the track and you unload for practice on Friday or Saturday. And you're like, we're out to lunch, boys. What do we do?
Right. Exactly.
And us drivers, we never complain at all. We never get on the radio
never.
and gripe and say things we shouldn't say and sound like 5-year-olds. We would never do that.
No, not ever. You're always just the best to get along with.
We're angels 24/7. And
So
if any of you listeners believe this, I have beachfront property in Tennessee that I'll sell you.
There you go. So really, who did inspire you to keep going after your dream of being a race car driver?
Well, there's a couple perspectives I want to give on that. From the inside of the sports side, I have to say I followed Jeff Gordon for a long time, and I know that's probably going to lose my fan base because I know the diehards that were senior fans, they're going to call me a sissy and everything else. Because I know how that rivalry always made me laugh for years. And then I look back and I'm like, wow, those Earnhardt and Gordon made a killing off of that. And they knew exactly what they were doing.
And they were friends.
They were. And Earnhardt respected Jeff Gordon so much for his ability. Yeah, he called him a sissy. He called him this, that, and the other, but he did it. And in the interviews you've heard, they even said there's money to be made here. They knew what they were doing. And honestly, it's the best thing that could have happened in NASCAR in the 90s because it grew the fan base so much during that peak period. But Jeff was a big inspiration for me. I became a fan of Brian Vickers when he started driving for his dad in 2001, 2002, when he moved up from Hooters Pro Cup to Busch. I was there when Brian scored his first top 10 at Busch at Richmond when he finished 7th in May of 2002. Followed him when he picked up the 5 car. I'm a big nerd, racing nerd with stats and everything. But again, it was what got me through difficult times as a child. So for me, it's good memories, and it helped fuel my fire to drive, not only be involved in the sport, but drive these things. But when Brian went on to drive for Hendrick and then Red Bull, but I just always admired him because he always had to overcome so much adversity. He always had good stuff, but he was always underrated in my opinion as a driver. And he always felt like he had to prove himself. And I feel like I'm very much in that same boat.
Yeah.
And outside of the sport, it was my Grammy, Peggy Echeverria, but Peggy Lewis was her when before she got remarried. I always joke with people. Her and I had a bond from when I was a little kid that was just so special. I joke with people. She was so proud of me all the time. I mean, she would discipline me when I did wrong, but she was so proud of me and believed in me so much. I could have knocked off a 7-Eleven and she could have driven the getaway car. That's how much she loved me. And that's just the relationship that we had. And I'm not saying go knock off a 7-Eleven. You're not going to do that. Although a Slurpee does sound really good right now. Sorry, I haven't eaten much today, so I've got my mind rolling. I apologize.
We're both thinking about food as we got on to record this.
Exactly. I almost had a bowl of something like, no, I really don't need macaroni and cheese sticking off my lips.
Yeah, exactly.
So
did she ever get to see you race?
She got to see me run once before she got really sick. Unfortunately, she passed in 2011 from pancreatic cancer. It got very aggressive very quickly by the time she got diagnosed, and unfortunately, she was just so tired. She just knew it was her time. But she saw me run once at Lonesome Pine down in Coburn, Virginia, about an hour from Bristol. And that's where we have family on my mom's side in the Big Stone Gap, Southeast Virginia area. And I drove an adventure that night. We'll put it that way. I lost a cylinder in a 4-cylinder car, so it was out to lunch, but I finished dead last, but you'd have thought I won the race, as excited as she was to see me. Unfortunately, she was busy. I was busy with college. I did get to test the Legends car and do some stuff, but she just the aggressiveness of the cancer had
Yeah.
gotten so bad that she couldn't go. So
Yeah. But she knew, no matter whether she was there in person or not, number
she did.
one, she knew that you were thinking of her because that was your thing, you and her. And you knew she was with you because that's just how it is, isn't it?
She rides with me every week when I race. I have a picture of her and my papa, and they ride inside my suit every week that I remember to actually put the picture in my suit.
Yeah.
And they ride right here at my heart. When I do it, I put it right inside, and I just all I say is love you guys and keep me away from the nut jobs. And they do. They do a pretty good job. They've got a pretty good track record of it. There's some stuff I've been on ovals and road courses that I probably shouldn't have gotten on, and I look up and I go, I know you. You can talk to anybody. You have a personality, and you made a deal with the man upstairs. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good feeling to have, to know that they're there with you.
I've got
So
two
what's
angels
your
riding on
favorite
my race
track?
team.
Yeah. What's your favorite track that you've raced at?
Ooh, so I'll give you a couple perspective. I'll give you the oval side and the road course side, because
Okay.
with doing the NASCAR stuff and the endurance road racing, I have a few. I've always loved Richmond. I've seen races there. I've done a little bit of testing at Richmond. That place has special to me for a few reasons because of it. So I love Richmond. I like Charlotte on the oval side. I've had a little bit of success in testing there. It just seemed to suit me. And I made my debut at Kansas. I loved Kansas, the way it drove. I like Martinsville. Haven't been there yet to drive it. I'm hoping to race there in Bristol next year. We can get into that later. And then if given the opportunity, I want to go run Homestead next year. I love that racetrack since they've done the work that they've done to it. It's one of the few tracks that they haven't screwed up. So at least in my opinion. On the road course side, I love Watkins Glen. I have fallen in love with that place since the first time I turned a lap. I like Sebring. It's a challenge. It's rough. I like the Daytona road course, but one of my all-time favorite road courses had to be Mid-Ohio. I had a really good time the first time I was there, and I love that place. The elevation change, the corners, the heavy braking zones. First time I was there, I had a BMW I was driving for a team called Racer X. Wasn't even supposed to be in the car that weekend. It was supposed to be in the team car. Something happened in practice. The owner decided the co-owners threw me in the car for practice. Friday, I came out of the box pretty quick. And he's like, yeah, he's mine for the weekend. So you're going to have to find another driver. And we just had a really good weekend. I had some co-drivers that were a little bit less experienced at road racing. So I was trying to help them as much as I could. But Mid-Ohio just suited me for some reason.
Mm-hmm. So I'll tell you a funny story about Mid-Ohio. So my husband and I both have motorcycle licenses, and he got his when he was like 16, and I got mine when I was 50. So it's a second marriage. And so when I met him, our first date was actually on a motorcycle.
Oh, wow.
But Mid-Ohio was someplace that my nephew raced back in the day, and my husband had never heard of it. So when we got married, I said, "You've never heard of Mid-Ohio and the superbike races?" And I couldn't believe it. So I said, "Well, we're going." So we went probably 10 years in a row there. And we love that place. We sit up on the hill right by the keyhole. And then sometimes we go down and sit in the shade where all the trees are along the line there. And we love that track. So I can see why driving it, I can see why you would love that track.
It's fun though. It's fast, but it flows. When you get through turns 4, when you go past China Beach, as long as you don't end up at the beach,
Yeah.
and the going through that 4 through 6 section and just going up over 7, and the car gets real light. And if you can be smooth and be disciplined, you can really make up time there. And you've just got to be really smooth. And thankfully they've repaved it. They're announced that they're going to put some fresh stuff down, which has been good. It's been overdue for a while. Hopefully it's a pavement that is a little more favorable in rain, because it's slick in the dry and it is an absolute monster in the wet. Ask anybody that's driven Mid-Ohio, bike, car, whatever.
Yeah. That's a great track.
Mm.
Absolutely love it. Yeah. So, what's been the biggest obstacle that you've had to overcome as far as, being a driver or getting to, ARCA or beyond? What's been the biggest obstacle?
That I don't come from a family that gave me a trust fund that I can spend at will.
Yeah.
Let's be realistic. I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah.
I don't come from money. I'm not going to ask my parents, like I said earlier, to pull out 5 mortgages for me to go race and sacrifice their life
Yeah.
for something that ultimately could go away tomorrow. I mean, injury or sponsor money dries up. I mean, it's a very volatile sport nowadays,
Yeah.
especially in the economy that we're in and we've been in for quite some time.
Mhm.
So money's been that, but also just I don't have the name Burton. I don't have the name Elliott. I don't have the name Blaney. I don't have a name attached to me. I mean, nothing against those guys, but I don't have that name.
Right.
Lockrow is not a name that's been in motorsport since the 80s or 90s. Let's be
Yeah.
realistic. I am a very unknown individual. I've kind of come out of the woodwork in a sense. I've tried to make an impression on people, but I'm trying to do it in an old school manner. I want to prove that the little guy can still make it. I want to, and I'm determined to show that the little guy can still make it. And that if you have an old school mentality and you're willing to go get sponsorship with help from my supportive wife and business manager and co-owner of KLR Management, Tanya, of course, but I can't do it on my own, and I will never say I will. But just I want to prove that these guys on the short tracks, if you have the determination and you're willing to go get the funding, if you're willing to put yourself out there and care about the fans, do the appearances, do what the sponsor asks you to do, which has been one of the biggest complaints. And driving is just a portion of it now. It's not what it was years ago. You have to do the outside of the seat requests. And that's something I'm very adamant about. Hence why I thank my dad adamantly for being so hard on me about my English language and just my writing, because I write my own press releases. I try to just make sure that what sorry. And um sorry, I got distracted for a second.
That's okay. So you run, let's talk about that a minute. One of my biggest pet peeves is when I'm on social media and it's not like they're using those like intentional um abbreviations like LOL. No, they just can't spell and they don't capitalize. And I'm not the grammar police, but it is annoying to see that. And when you see people notice that, like if there's a sponsor looking at your social media, and they do before they sponsor you, they're going to be watching what you're doing,
Mhm.
and they see that what you're posting and it's not spelled right and it's not a lot of those things, they are going to think twice about having you represent their brand. And so you are very right, and a lot of people don't think about that. They don't think about how they come across outside of the racetrack.
Now, and a lot of drivers don't realize that these companies, it's a risk for them to get involved. You are an extension of ABC organization, whether it's small, midsize, or a large corporate enterprise. You are an extension of their marketing department. You
Mhm.
hold a responsibility to make sure that these people have what they need and to make sure that you take care of them, that their investment is taken care of and protected as their brand is, along with yours at the
Yeah.
same time. It's a big responsibility, and it takes a lot of practice, a lot of nurturing, and a lot of just being self-aware. And you always have to have your head on a swivel and making sure that you're not saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. You want to push the limit of having a personality, but you also, with today's climate, you also can't go over the edge to where then unfortunately you become a flight risk and then that investment goes away. So it's
Yeah.
a fine line. You have to be well spoken, you have to come across educated, but you also want to be relatable to the common fan and to the common individuals that support motorsports,
Yeah.
especially the short track and the grassroots stuff, because those people, sometimes those folks that are only able to go to the grassroots stuff, that investment goes a long way, because a lot of them are blue collar folks that
Yeah.
it takes a lot of their income to go. So you want to make sure you're giving them the best bang for their buck, because a lot of times they're the ones that support ABC sponsor or partner that's on your car. So for me, it's important. That's why I said old school. And I apologize for a minute ago I was checking something off the camera. We've got 2 cats, so I wasn't sure if I was getting ready to get attacked at my feet. So they like to do that when I'm busy. But anyway, where I was going with it was you have to be careful, but you want to give an old school approach, where a lot of these drivers nowadays tend to shy away from the fans and don't want to be bothered with it. I take the time to do it. I know it's important, because I understand, and I remember being that fan of being at those trailers, waiting an hour and a half to get an autograph, and just 2 minutes of a driver's time who's got thousands of people that he'll meet over the course of a race weekend. So I understand what these kids and these adults and just these diehards want, because I remember it, because not a long time ago I was that person.
Right. Exactly. So, do you have a most memorable moment in your racing career?
My first win, when I won my first endurance race at Carolina Motorsports Park in Kershaw. For those that aren't familiar, it's I think it's a 2.4 mile facility. It's about an hour and 15 minutes south of Charlotte. Nice facility. A lot of teams have tested cars there, Cup cars, Busch cars, Xfinity cars. I'm sorry. I was reading something today that said Busch. They've tested cars there from different divisions of NASCAR for a long time. And I didn't realize just how significant CMP was. And ironically, it was in a BMW. It was for an underdog team. Nobody counted us they figured we would finish top 10. We had a solid car, but nobody thought that we could win. And we overcame adversity in the weather. I got in with the last couple hours in the pouring rain. Our brakes were fading. I had a clutch that was starting to go intermittent, and I had no wipers. Unfortunately, we weren't planning on the rain to be as bad as they forecasted. And we figured that we probably won't need it. We just threw some Rain-X on there, but God willing and some help from a couple of angels, we came from 7th to 1st when I got in the car. And I just was able to keep the car on the racetrack, run smooth, consistent laps. We were able to catch guys that weren't as comfortable in the rain. And I was able to get my first win. And I had great teammates that drove phenomenal 6 hours or 5 hours before that, before I got in the car. So, I mean, it was an absolute team victory. That was a great memory. My first time running at Daytona, in testing. I mean, having to go flat at Daytona is no easy task when you're coming right out of Legends cars. Let's be realistic. And you haven't had a lot of time on short tracks in general. Mm-hmm. But I knew that it was an opportunity to test my ability and push me to a limit. And I want to say my third memory that I have in motorsports was starting the business that Tanya and I have created with KLR Management Group LLC. We're here to represent the little guy, a guy like me and the 7 or 8 other clients that we represent. We want to show that you don't have to have thousands of dollars for a monthly retainer. We're here to help you find a way to make this happen. So the fact that she's been so helpful and just so supportive of my career has been something I'm very grateful for. And I feel like we're growing. We're turning a lot of heads. We're making some waves, and I think we've got some big things coming in the next couple of years, and I'm excited to see where we go.
Yeah, that's exciting. And there's so much more to motorsports and being a driver and getting a ride and all that than what your average person understands or even knows what it takes to do it. And the fact that you have seen the need for having a business where you can help others is remarkable. And I love seeing that for sure. And, you know, you just never know, like we were talking earlier, you never know who's watching or who might be behind you or whatever. But for people to get their name out there and get noticed is really difficult, because when you think about how many tracks there are and how many drivers at each track, and there's always those hidden gems of drivers all over the country, but if they don't get themselves noticed, then it's really hard for them to move up or to get up into the even the ARCA series or the trucks. And so it takes somebody like you, Kyle, and your wife to do what you're doing to help those people. And that's a really, really good thing that you're doing. So I appreciate that we can tell your story and let people know.
Well, we appreciate that. It's been a long journey so far. I mean, it's incredible to believe that we've started this just a little over 2 years ago and that we've grown as much as we have. And a lot of people think there's this huge team of people behind us, and it's just the two of us. We do everything on our own, other than one intern that we have who's also a driver that we represent with Camp Teague. He's a 19-year-old that we just brought on recently, and he's looking to help get some extra college credits. He wants to learn the business side, so we brought him on as an intern to help out when Tanya's tied up with some stuff, but also to understand what it takes on the business end. I do a lot of the back end stuff and some of the website based and some of the graphic work, but she handles the day-to-day operation. She's hammering the phones with the emails, doing the representation, pitching proposals, pushing decks, doing a lot of the social media. I mean, she's phenomenal at what she does. And we've made a really, really good team. And we're just hoping to give the little guy a shot that you can still do this. And we're not going to charge you an astronomical amount of money to do this. Yes, we have to pay bills and make sure costs are covered, but we want to show you we can get this done. And where others falter, we're going to pick up the slack and go back to the basics of where things should be in this sport. And we're going to make sure that those activation elements that were missed or overlooked by others, we're going to pick up the pieces and do double and triple what was promised.
Yeah. What is it they say? Under promise and over deliver.
Correct.
Yeah. That's a good motto to run your business by for sure. So, fans, I'm sure you've got some fans out there. Do you have a fan experience or a fan story that you want to share?
I've got a few. So the best one was this guy who was enjoying Speed Weeks last year at Daytona. Let's put it that way. It was what day was it? I think it was Friday. It was Friday, Thursday or Friday. We were there in the ARCA garage. I was spotting for Bryce Hageberg and ARCA with Andy Hillenberg's fast track racing operation, which is where I made my first start in ARCA at Kansas 2 years ago. But I was spotting for Bryce since I wasn't approved to run the race. And we met our friends Lee and Carlos Figueroa out of Florida. They do security at Daytona and Sebring. And Lee, we met, we hit it off with them. They're very good friends and supporters of ours. But Lee had told everybody that I was walking around, and she wanted to introduce me to different people that she knew in the campground. So we walk, and she's introducing me to people. And there was this one gentleman who, like I said, he'd had a few drinks and he was enjoying his Speed Weeks. And I like to personalize my hero cards when I sign them because I feel like it adds a little bit extra to it because it lets people know that I took the time to shake their hand and learn their name. Now, whether I remember that when I see them again, I try my best, but I just want to give them a little extra for being there because I know it means a lot. There was this guy his name was Junior, and I asked him his name, he shook his hand. He's like, Junior. And so I have a very sarcastic personality and no filter. And I said, is that Junior with two J's? And they all lost it. And the guy didn't get it. And You're funny. I can't really tell you what he said because he was drunk and
Yeah.
but because this is a family show, but it summarized "you're funny," and then I signed it, got a picture with him, and then we moved on to the next camper. So
Yeah. That's a good story. You know, I met a guy. My husband and I met a guy when we went to Daytona a few years ago, and he didn't have any legs, and he was in a wheelchair, and he had long hair, and he looked like a product of the '70s, which is when I was in high school. But it was so hot, and we had a shady spot, and so at the table, so we invited him to bring his wheelchair and sit in the shade, with us. And so we got to know him a little bit and found out, we assumed he was in the war or he was in an accident, but actually it was some kind of fish, and I can never remember what it was, but some kind of fish that bit his leg. I
wow.
think he only had one leg, had lost one leg, but
Hmm.
this fish had bit his leg, and it was poisonous. And by the time they figured out everything, anyway, he'd lost part of his leg.
Hmm.
But he was a huge NASCAR fan. And, my husband goes and he's a fan and that, but he's not a fan, he tolerates sometimes when I want to go to the racetrack. And so Johnny was his name, and we talked and got to know him. And then the next day we saved him a spot. So sat with him all 3 days we were there. And I send him a Christmas card. I send him a birthday card. I get a message back every once in a while. Sometimes we get a letter back from him just saying, "Hey, are you coming to Daytona this year? Are you going to be in the infield? Where are you going to be?" And what are the chances that I would meet that guy? And he and I really hit it off. And if you saw him strolling, going down the street in his wheelchair, you would have an impression of him, if you understand what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Um, but to get to know him and to hear his story, and then be able to really be friends with him and stay in touch, it means a lot. And so you look back at that story of Junior, and and it means a lot to you. And that's the same with some of the people I've met. That to me is a benefit of motorsports that you can't explain to people. They don't get it if they're not a part of it. Like I said earlier, it's my favorite part. Now that I've met Kyle in person, kind of in person, over StreamYard. But if we do meet in person someday, we're going to feel like we've really gotten to know each other, compared to me just being like, "Oh, who's this driver? I'm going to, try to follow him." It makes a difference when you can really talk to somebody and hear their story. And
Absolutely, and I
yeah,
appreciate that very much. We will be at Daytona in February as of right now, so if you're going to be there, look
I'm
forward to
hoping
meeting you in
so.
person. Fingers crossed. We're hoping too. We're so I'm not approved yet to do Daytona for trucks, but we're planning to go down and support the team for the
Yeah,
first race of the year. Is like we want to be part of like the send off when they take the green. So
right, right. I'm hoping so. It's on my calendar, let's put it that way. And so, you have to schedule it or it won't happen. So I'm hoping so. It's been a couple years since I was there, so it's time to go back for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah. Is there anything, Kyle, that I haven't asked you about or that we haven't talked about that we really need to discuss or let the listeners know more about who Kyle is?
I just want people to know that I'm different. I'm not what you've seen over the last 10 to 12 years. I'm more of your old school driver. Yes, I'm part of the newer generation of driver, I guess, but I'm old school at heart. I very much respect the history of this sport. I'm a diehard fan. I honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I still keep the diecast collection going. It was a promise I made to
I
my
do.
grandmother. before she passed away, that I would keep it going for her because we both contributed to it. And maybe one day, if I have kids, that it's something I can pass along to them. But it's a way of honoring and cherishing her memory. But I do care about this sport, and it's sad to see sometimes the way things have gone. Yes, times change. We kind of have to roll with the punches, let's say. But I'm old school. I care about these fans. I care about these partners that we work with. I care about these potential partners that we're entertaining for next year and beyond. I want to be different. I know getting into this sport, it takes a lot. I know you have to prove yourself, and different scares these people. And I've been witness to that quite a bit because of just the way I go about it. But I just want any fan or potential business owner or CEO or COO, CFO, take a chance on the little guy. Please don't write us off because we're different, because I'm with a small team right now.
Yeah.
I've had to pave the way, and I'm trying to pave the way that the little guy can get back in the sport and can be successful, and that there are really good drivers that have an untapped potential. And I feel I'm one of them. But I also feel that I can do a really good job for your organization outside of the car.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you faltered in a former program, reach out and find out how to get involved with me, because I'm different and I want to bring this sport back to the glory days. I want to help bring the sport back to the glory days that it had. And that I'm open to doing different disciplines of motorsports. I want to look at doing some IMSA as well. My goal is to do the Rolex 24, whether it's in a prototype or a GT car at some point, because I just love that race. I fell in love with it first time I watched it in 2005. But just take a chance on me. I'm different. It's frustrating when I see organizations complain, moan over frustration of a current situation that they're not happy with. And then because it's all they know, or we know it, they re-sign. And then by March, they're complaining about the same. It's the definition of insanity in NASCAR, I guess, is the way you'd call it. And it's frustrating, but I want these people to take me seriously, and I'm not going away. I'm going to do whatever it takes. And one of these days I'm going to be in a cup car.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to be cheering for you, Kyle. That's for sure. Like I said, there's so many young drivers that need a shot. And I think about how, in football, they have what they call the combine, where the guys that are wanting to be picked up for draft, to be drafted into football, they go and everybody checks them out. But we don't have anything like that in NASCAR or racing. Okay, maybe you're in the ARCA series, but it's not the same thing as going, for the weekend to the combine. And I understand what you're saying about, there's so many good drivers in the grassroots level that just don't have the money, don't have the opportunity. I listened to a podcast last night. I'm a huge podcast listener, Kyle, as well as doing one for myself. But I listened to In the Pits, which is a podcast that comes from the Northeast part of the country. And Scott is it Scott? Yeah. Scott Tapley, I think is his name, is on that show. And he was talking about, he did a race over the weekend at Riverhead.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've learned a lot about the Northeast part of the country and the racing. But I really like Scott a lot on that show. And so he was the race director, and he was talking last night about a 12-year-old boy that comes from nothing. And he and his dad have put this car together and the things that they've done. And the kid is amazing. 12 years old. He was racing some big race that they had there last weekend, and he won the pole.
Wow.
And he, I believe, finished third in the race, second or third. And it was all that Scott could talk about. And as you were talking about, kids who come from nothing, don't have the trust fund to behind them in that. There's a classic example of a kid who, unless he gets some notice or gets noticed by somebody, which it looks like he's starting to, he could be one of the best drivers ever. He could be the next Kyle Larson. But if we don't give him a chance, just because he can't bring money to the table, that is a crying shame in our sport.
Unfortunately, while racing is a business, we've kind of done it to ourselves. We have put this emphasis on, yes, you have to keep the doors open. You got to keep the lights on. You got to keep the rent paid. But in my opinion, something needs to be said for owners giving some of these guys a shot. There's some owners out there that have income that could afford to do it. And it would be very beneficial to the sport, in my opinion. And unfortunately, it's drivers like this young man up at Riverhead that, if not given that opportunity, are going to, that potential is going to go untapped and it's going to go to waste. And unfortunately, and it's a shame to see that. I mean, but that's why we started KLR, is we wanted to give these guys an opportunity to be represented. But also, I went through a lot of fight. I wasted a number of years doing things that I thought were beneficial. I tried to methodically plan out races I could run based on money that I had that came out of mostly my own pocket. And I want these drivers to not have to be held up for so long because of barriers that can be busted down by understanding do's and don'ts and ways to approach it, and presentation tactics from at track, off track that can speed and expedite their careers or expedite the process of getting some funding. Yes, we know relationships must be built. You have to build that sense of trust with a potential partner. And it's vital because they have to feel like I said earlier, they have to know that their investment is going to go far and isn't going to be wasted, because we do know people, not everybody in this world has good intentions, but we need to start finding a way to give drivers a chance, and we need to start showing that money doesn't drive everything. Yes, you have to take care of stuff, but we need to reward drivers for success. We need to give them a shot. Whether it works out or not, you won't know until you try it. And we need to get back to that in some form or fashion, or unfortunately, it's going to be a rich kid's game. We're going to turn into the next Formula One.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't need to be blunt, and I know that probably sounds true, but let's be realistic. Formula One is a trust fund baby's playground. Let's be realistic. And unfortunately, we need to change the trajectory very, very quickly.
I often hear Formula One referred to as the rich man's series. And, I don't know if you watched Driven to, what was the name of it on Netflix?
The series that
I mean, I learned a lot about F1. I wasn't an F1 fan. I never was exposed to it. But even to be able to afford a ticket to go watch it, it's ridiculous. And so, I did learn a lot about it. I'll catch a race here and there, but it's really not at the top of my list of things to focus on. But, it takes all kinds, I guess. And if that's how it's going to be for them, let's not make that how it's going to be for us.
Again, I agree. We have to change the trajectory. These drivers have to start caring about these fans. They're the ones that support these businesses that are on the side of these race cars. But we have to stop. We have to stop the behavior and rewarding the behavior of drivers and teams that don't hold up their end of the bargain. They need to be held accountable. And I am challenging every CEO, and I've done this before, and I'm going to do it again. Please don't hold this against me, but I'm going to challenge every small business owner, CEO, CFO, COO, every one of you that have these businesses. We understand we are in a down economy, but you still have to promote. You still have to market your organization. You still have to look at a 1 year, 5 year, and a 10-year plan looking forward. Stop rewarding these fools for overpromising and underperforming for you. Give it back to the little guy and let us do what we know how to do. And those of us that know what we can do and will do and are willing to do without hidden fees and extra astronomical hidden gems, let's say, that come up that unfortunately put a bad taste in the mouth for these organizations. But I'm challenging every single one of you, and you know who you are. Stop rewarding this process of these guys that do this. Take a chance on a little guy.
Yeah.
You don't know what we can do because you haven't given us a shot. They've had multiple shots, and we need to stop defining insanity in motorsports, no matter what level we're at.
Yeah. So, Kyle, if we wanted to follow you or your business, social media, whatever, what's the best way for somebody to either get in touch with you, follow you on social media, whatever you want to share?
Well, the best way to get a hold of us and learn a little bit about our organization with my brand is www.kylelocrow.com. Right now, just due to cost restraints, most of the KLR stuff is tied into a sub page on my website. And the reason being, like I said, it's just we're trying to save a little bit of money right now just because of the cost of it, and we're trying to be smart. And then eventually we're going to branch out and make it a sub-site. But I actually took a page out of Earnhardt Jr.'s book where he's kind of had Junior Motorsports tied into his personal website, because I thought if through the promotion and through pushing and any media that I do, I want it to trickle down to the drivers that we represent. So you can reach out there. I'm on Facebook, Instagram. I still have a TikTok at this point. We have a management Twitter with KLR Management. I have a LinkedIn. I have a YouTube page, Lockrow Racing. There's a second one floating around of a channel that I've got some old late model stuff on, and I've lost the original media, so I don't want to pull them. I need to pull them and re-upload them at some point. But at that point, we've got a lot of that. And if you want to find a way to get in touch with us and you want to get involved, or if you're looking to, and you have a driver that needs representation, you can reach out to Tanya Banning Lockrow. Her email and all of her contact information is on the website. Reach out. We do have a few spots still available for next year. Obviously, it just depends on how much help that we have. But if anybody needs advice, if they need some coaching on a simulator to get more apt for the season, if they need some help, we have multiple facets of this business that we do. But if you want to partner with my brand specifically, she's the person you reach out to. We have decks and proposals available, and we will tailor them to any budget or, restrictions or needs that you have for your organization, or, let's say programs you want to emphasize on in 24. Okay.
Sounds good. There's a lot of ways they can get in touch with you. And if they can't find you somewhere, which I can't believe they wouldn't, they can always reach out to me and I'll be able to connect you as well. So, Kyle, I really appreciate your time. I love hearing your story and the passion that you have for the grassroots level driver. That's important. We cannot lose our interest, our passion of getting those drivers noticed. And, honestly, I had somebody yesterday ask me, and I've had a couple people over the last 5 years ask me this question: what famous people have you interviewed? And so I kind of chuckled to myself a little bit. And so, I shared a few people in the motorsports business that I have interviewed, but what I said was, most of my interviews, oh, sorry, I need a nap. Most of my interviews are with people you've never heard of, but they all have a great story. And they're all of those people, Kyle, are grassroots people. They're drivers, they're car owners, they're track owners, they're promoters, whatever they might be. And it's not, the people that are famous, sure, I love to interview them. They're fun. They all have good stories too. But what about the people who aren't famous? Where are they going to tell their stories? So in my magazine that I do, the online magazine, that's where you're going to read about them. On this podcast, that's where you're going to hear about them. And so you and I are kind of on the same path a little bit with getting those grassroots people noticed and that. So mine are mostly women. Once in a while, Kyle, we have a bonus episode like you, but most of the time it's women that I'm trying to help, or young girls. But I appreciate what you and your wife are doing. And I just want to encourage you to don't give up. Don't give up. Just keep going after it.
It's hard some days, I'll be honest with you. I mean, this
Sure.
year we had an okay year, but I'll be honest with you, just it was a dumpster fire this year. I mean, if
Yeah.
it blew up, if it broke, if it did this, I mean, we had a couple good finishes, but if it could go wrong this year, it did. And
Well,
honestly, I'm ready for December 3rd. I'm looking forward to Indianapolis for the PRI show to
yeah.
go for some networking, but I'm looking forward to December 31st at 11:59, flipping over and starting fresh next year. Because I tell you what, I mean, we capped off the year with a 5th place finish at Dominion in the 6 hour there, and we've got some real positivity going into next year, and we've got a
Good.
lot of great leads that we're talking to. But I am ready for a fresh start, and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need a change of the racing gods to shine on me next year.
Yeah. I'll be at PRI on Friday, and I'll actually be on so this year they're having something called the podcast stage.
Oh, okay.
I think it's something new. I didn't go to PRI last year. It's been 2 years since I was there, but apparently they have called the podcast stage, and they're going to have people doing their podcast or interviews from that stage that people can listen to and watch and whatever. And I'll be there on that stage Friday from 9 to 9:45. So if you're around, make sure you come over and flag me down when I'm done so that maybe we can meet face to face.
We're looking forward to it. Now that you've said it, I know Tanya just over in the back. She's in the background, keeping an eye on me, as always. Keeping the cats away, but also keeping me in line. But no, we'll absolutely make sure that we make time to be there. And I can't thank you and your folks enough and your fan base enough for being gracious enough to let me invade the women's world for an evening.
Well, that's quite all right. I appreciate that. Thank you, Kyle. And if you'll hang around after the recording so I can get a little information, and then I'll see you at PRI.
Sounds great. I hope everybody has a great holiday season. Have a safe Thanksgiving, a safe Christmas, and just a little side note personally for me. I've been a victim of a drunk driving accident. Please, everybody, just drink responsibly this holiday season. Spend it with your loved ones. Don't spend it in a hospital or, end up in a grave over a mistake. So please just be responsible, and let's go into the new year strong.
I agree. Thank you for that, Kyle. All right, everyone. That was Kyle Lockrow. We are excited that we can have a bonus episode with such a wonderful young man. And so I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you at the next one. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Traveling to racetracks is coming to an end. So now it's time to think about where you're going to go to relax and enjoy your time off. Someplace with a beach like the Bahamas? How about a destination with lots of golf courses? Or do you want to go somewhere romantic like Paris? If you like to hunt, there are a great many destinations where you could do that, as well as fish, snowmobile, ski, or just relax in a cabin in the woods surrounded by snow. If those destinations don't appeal to you, the Women's Motorsports Network official travel agent, Brittany Heisinger, knows some wonderful places where you could enjoy yourself. Give her a call at 602-291-5144 or find her on Facebook at Smart Moms Travel with Brittany. That's 602-291-5144. And on Facebook, it's Smart Moms Travel with Brittany. That's Brittany. And tell her you heard about her from the Women's Motorsports Network. Thank you for listening to the Women's Motorsports Network podcast. Subscribe to my show and follow me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and YouTube. If you or someone you know would like to be featured in the Women's Motorsports Network News online magazine, this podcast, or Let's Talk Racing Live, my social media show, contact me via Messenger on Facebook at Melinda Russell, or send me an email at womensmotorsportsnetwork@gmail.com.